Welcome to another episode of the Revenue Career Ladder podcast, where we dive deep into the career journeys of revenue-focused professionals to give you real insights, actionable tips, and maybe even a little reassurance that the journey is yours to define. Now, I don't think my guest on screen today needs any introduction. He is the front man himself, Jack Frimston, one of the founding directors of We Have a Meeting, and we're going to be talking about his journey from maths teacher at Kumon Maths, or maths tutor, as I say, at Kumon Maths, all the way up to founding director at WAM. But before we jump into that, how are we, Jack?
I'm so good, Jamie. It's always a pleasure to be in your company, and I feel like we're going to take a bit of a trip down memory lane today because it's got me thinking about some of the weird and wonderful jobs I've had along the way. So let's see where we go.
Yeah, do you know what? I tell you what, we've had, this is maybe episode 5 or 6 that we've recorded, and we've had a lot of McDonald's and fish and chip shops, but we've not had maths tutor or DJ on there yet, which are a couple of the first sort of early jobs that you had. So I am interested to talk about those, but this will actually release after something else that we've been working on. So by the time people are listening to or watching this, they will hopefully have subscribed, watched, consumed, listened, got deep into the sales stoic. And if you haven't, I mean, where have you been? Go and check it out for 366 days of daily sort of stoic advice related to the world of sales. But that's something else that you should definitely go and check
That's something
out.
for another day.
Yeah, that's something for another. Well, that's something for the next 11 months of the year, because this will probably be February time. But let's go back to your first ever job then. Maths tutor for Kumon Maths.
Yeah, so it's funny that you say most people's first job was McDonald's or a chip shop. I got offered a job in a chip shop, but my mum wouldn't let me. I was 15, and I don't know if you've seen photos of me at 15, but I was a kid that frequented the chip shop on a regular basis, so I knew everybody very well. And then they offered me a job to peel the potatoes and do all that lovely stuff. And I think they were going to pay me in chips or something. But my mum was like, they've got no health and safety. You'll chop your finger off. No, you can't do it. But what I was allowed to do was teach maths. For people that know me will be like, I didn't know that maths was one of your strong points. It's not. I know my 12 times tables really well. You could ask me any 12 times 12 timetable and I'd give it you. Do you want to test
12
it?
times 166.
No, no. Only between 12 and 12. So I only know those. If it gets to 13, Jamie, I'm out of there. Anything above 13. Um, so yeah, so that was my first job, and as a child, my mum wanted to get me some extra tutoring because I wasn't very good at maths, and I got to a point where I was like 12, 13, 14, and I was like, you know what? I'm sick of this. Like, I don't think I need it anymore. I'm gonna quit. And when I went to quit, the woman that ran the Kumon Maths said, you know what? We like Jack. He's good. He's good for the other kids. Would you want a job instead? So my job was to sit there, help some of the kids who were struggling with their subtractions, and tick their answers and give them advice, motivation, and I got £20 a week for 4 hours work. So
So
is that a
I
lot of
was going to
money?
say, well, no, what's the minimum wage now? Like £12 an hour, something like that.
Something like
But
that.
back then though, you're
Back in the
roughly
day,
you're
yeah.
roughly the same age as me. I think my first job was in the realms of 5 or 6 quid an hour. But I'm just thinking. You said you weren't good at maths, which is, funnily enough, what was going through my head. I was like, Jack, maths, couldn't see it. So was it just a case of cheap labour for them?
I think so. I think they liked having me around, being completely honest. I think like maths can be quite boring. And I think I brought an energy to the group, and it was quite. Ins- I'm gonna toot my own horn. I'm gonna say it was inspiring for the other kids. This is what you could be if you studied maths. Um, but it was a bit of a stick around. I think they needed an extra pair of hands. It only lasted a couple of years, and then I was like, actually, it's time to move on now. But that was like my first ever job, and I think earning 20 quid a week when you're that young, it was decent.
Yeah, because you got it jotted down here that you were 12. So what were you spending your 20 quid a week on, other than the chip shop?
Other than the chip shop, I don't think there was any money left. Left. I remember like credits for your mobile phone. I know that sounds
Of course.
balmy, but £10 a week, sweets.
£10 a
That was,
week. Jesus. So
I
you were
know.
very active.
I was cold calling from a young age. I was busy, Jamie. Cold calling people in my school, trying to make connections. Yeah, that was it. Probably, I don't think the money went on anything good. But it definitely gave me. I've definitely been someone that has never shied away from work. I like to think that my work ethic is there. I've always had jobs, wanted to be working, even when I've not necessarily needed to financially. I remember that we'll talk on it later, but when I came off the cruises, I didn't need to work, but I got a job in Amazon because I was like, I'm bored. I just want to do something.
God, I was saying this to a colleague last week when we were talking about the 150 million euro millions, and I said, you know what? Even if I won money like that, I'd have to have some sort of like 9 to 5, even if it was setting up some businesses and just running those. Like I couldn't be one of those people to go and sit on a yacht 11 months of the year. I need something to get up for.
Boring. But I don't think I would say no to the 150 million,
No,
being
no.
completely honest. I'd take it. But then you've got, it's just the freedom to do what you want. I'm very lucky now to be in a position that I always think as well, like even if you were Chris Martin or Ed Sheeran, there are going to be parts of your day where you think, oh, can I really be bothered singing that song tonight? Or can I really be bothered doing it? It's like any job that you do consistently, there'll be parts that you don't enjoy. And the dream job is just to do the bits that you love. But I also think that sometimes there's something magical or beautiful about doing the gritty hard work.
Mm. Yeah, and that's actually a very nice stoic sort of mantra, is doing the hard things. I think there's some sort of um, I was in Lisbon, and there's a place called Sintra, which is a I don't know, few hundred-year old garden, and it was basically when they were doing the tour, they were like, right, which we're going to walk around, and every time you can take multiple paths, I'm going to ask you which path you take, and there's no right or wrong answer, but I want to know whether you go left, right, you go up, down, straight on. And we did a few of them, and we got to the point where it was basically the lesson learned was you should always pick the toughest path, because that's the one that you're going to develop most on or learn most
Mm.
on. So we were like, right, you can go uphill up the dodgy stairs, and it's like 20 minutes up, or you can go just straight down to that nice little seat down there. And obviously people were like, yeah, let's go down, that sounds good. And he was like, no, wrong answer, you should have gone up.
I
And it was
like that.
something to do with monks and taking the harder route.
Yeah.
um, but right, so that was your first ever job at age 12. Albeit, I know there weren't as many regulations back then, but I think that's young even for no regulations.
Mm.
Um, what was your first proper job, in inverted commas? Like first job where you sort of applied for it, and it was I guess like a career move. It was a decision based on, right, I need to start taking work more seriously.
Very hard to answer that because, being completely honest, Jamie, I've never taken work seriously. Like with most things in life, I don't take things seriously because I like to enjoy the fun in it. I'll tell you the first proper job I had, like I, I did the Kumon, I did the DJing, and then I also ended up as a carer for a disabled lad for a while. And that was a bit proper, but that wasn't me thinking about my career. That was me thinking 17, 18, it's something that I can do. When I was 16, I went and did work experience, and they ask you to do your work experience. What is something that you think you would want to do in the future? Go and get some experience doing it. And I went and worked in my old primary school. So where I'd come from a few years previously, I went and worked there because I thought I'll be a teacher. I wasn't really thinking much about it because I think deep down, part of me thought I'll probably be an actor or a pop star or whatever. I probably won't need to think about my career. So I went and did my work experience. Now, my best friend at the time, Ramin, he was also doing his work experience, but he's had a passion for music, who now runs a record label. And he went to a publishing company thinking, I like music, this will be great. Although it wasn't a publishing company, what it turned out to be in our small local town of Lytham St Anne's was a call center, and they were selling um, to advertising space around the perimeter boards of football clubs. You'd ring up local businesses and you'd sell them the space to advertise their cafe or whatever it might be. Um, and he did that for a week, and then the summer holidays were approaching, and he said they've kept me on, and they're asking if I've got any other friends. Would you like a job? Now that was about £2.55 an hour. That was really illegal, but we were young kids looking to find money. So 9 to 5, 16 years old, and I did it for 2 summers on the trot, and they knew we would only be there for 6 weeks. And I turned up in a shirt. I had like a proper adult shirt, and I started drinking brews, and I was hanging around with 30, 40, 50-year-old blokes that this was their career move. And that felt like my first proper job. And I sat down at the desk on the first day, and they handed me the yellow pages for Wolverhampton and said you can start at the front or the back, go forth and cold call.
And the rest is history.
And the rest is
Should
history.
we just end the podcast
Just
there?
end
Because
that.
it's a really nice segue into what you do today, Roo.
Well, yeah, but it's just mad that obviously I've had this career within, and I've done all these crazy different things throughout. And then obviously I went on to be a carer after that for the space of like a year. But how funny that what I do now, my career, I'm proud to say now that my career is exactly the same thing that I was doing 16 years ago for my first proper job. I think that's crazy that it's come round full circle.
Yeah, there's some sort of life destiny thing there, isn't there? But do you know what? There's two things I want to touch on. One, I think you'd have made a great teacher. Like you would be the type of teacher at school that everyone would look forward to the lesson, and when they go home, be like, "Oh, good day at school. Yeah, we have Mr. Frimston. It was wicked." You'd be a good teacher. So if things take a turn, you could always go back into teaching.
We don't know how to count, but it was fun.
You're just not maths.
Yeah.
And the second thing, your definition of a proper job was putting a shirt on, drinking brews, and talking to 40 to 50-year-old men. That was the definition of a proper job.
Yeah, but that, you know what? That I felt so cool. Like I felt so like adult to be like, okay, I'm getting my own. I'd get the bus into work and I'd be there and I'd be like, right, I've got my brew, I'm ready for the day. And like, I don't know, there's something about young people they so desperately want to be adult, don't they? And now I'm an adult, all I want to do is be a kid again and play.
So I was just I'm glad you said that, because you've recently become a father, and I think one of the things that parents will tell you, or experts will tell you about kids, is kids want to be involved in everything because they're intrigued by adult life. So like you're in the fridge and you're cooking, and they're like, "Oh, what are you doing? Can I see? Can I help? Can I have a knife?" And you're obviously like, "No, it's a knife," but they just want to help and they want to get involved. And it's the same when you're like a 16-year-old, 18-year-old. You said like when I first went to school at year 7, I was like, "Oh my god, blazer, tie," and I was like, "WH Smith, you get your nice pencil case,
Yeah.
you get the fresh pencil case." And I think it is like this podcast is about trying to shed a bit of light on people's careers from the point at which they, well, in your case 12, but the point at which they had their first proper job and how on earth they ended up where they are today. But it's quite an interest. I can imagine people listening to this coming fresh out of like university or college thinking, right, let's attack the world, let's go and make £1 million, let's go and be the new Stephen Bartlett, which leads us on nicely to the like having a conversation about the meat of your career today. So the first highlight role, sales executive at Reed.co.uk. And I think everyone will know who Reed are, but do you want to just run us through that job?
Oh yeah, they are Reed.co.uk, the UK's #1 job site. Legally, I think we have to say that slogan. They were, and still are, from what I know, amazing employees. So I'll tell you the story. Obviously, I went to university. I studied drama and musical theatre, like every aspiring salesperson does. And university ended. At the time, me and two of my friends had formed a band, but it wasn't really a band. It was an idea of a band. We said, well, let's move down to London to try and make it. We had glimpses of a manager that was going to sign us, so that was like there's stuff on the horizon. Let's get to London. So got to London and we needed jobs, and I applied for sales jobs. So this was 6 months previous to Reed. I was actually in London. I started there in the January. I started in the summer, and I got a job in a call center that was very similar to the call center that I first worked at, and it was selling insurance for Sky remotes. Do you need insurance for your Sky remote? Apparently so.
I'm trying to think like how many there's obviously enough people in the country that throw their remote at a wall or lose
Wow.
it or spill liquid on it. That's beyond really. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, so Sky Insurance was a thing, and I took that job, and I got promoted very quickly within that company, and then I got demoted, and then I got sacked, and then I got rehired. It was 6 months of emotional turmoil, and I applied for two jobs in the city. So I said, right, that the commute to work's 2 hours. I need something a bit proper now. Like, what am I going to do? A good job. And I got offered two jobs. One was read.co.uk for 20k a year, which now isn't even minimum wage, but at the time that was like Covent Gardens, 20k, bloody hell. And then the other one was West London, which was kind of away from where I was living, and that was a recruitment job, but that was 22. So I said, oh, I'm taking that job, and then my mum said, well, just think about it. Reed is actually like a proper company. They've got hundreds of people. They'll look after their team. Why don't you go somewhere where they're going to look after you? And that was my like first proper job.
Well, and there's actually a nice little explanation nugget of advice from your mum there as well of like you that age old moving to London. That's quite a common thing. Like when you talk to a lot of people actually who work in SaaS, which is the world that sort of I've been in the last few years, a lot of people tend to move to London, the big city, to live their life for a few years and see if they can cut it in that sort of world. So you've gone down to London, you've started selling insurance for Sky remotes. Who knew? I didn't even realize that was a thing. Did you? Was that a hard sell? Like the
Ye-
remotes?
Yeah, but being completely honest, the data they used to, I felt so morally wrong about that job that it was a lot of old ladies, and I was like, this isn't sales. This is like they're trying to get you to scam people. And I was like, it wasn't for me. There was lots and lots of different campaigns, but like it was insurance at its finest. Didn't sit right with me, and there was a point where I had to get out.
Right. Okay. So then you had two jobs, one of which was Reed, the one you took. So the lower salary, which is actually
Yeah.
a good piece of advice there from your mum, is sometimes safety is better than the risk of well, a couple of K more, 10% more
Yeah.
after tax. It's not really a great deal of money, but a nice little nugget of sort of advice there from your mum. That's proper mum advice, isn't it?
I see so you know what these days I see it as well. Like I see so many people go where the money is, and that's not my advice. Maybe if you're 40, 50, and I can't talk because I haven't experienced those years. But as a 32-year-old, I think it's especially your 20s. It's not about the money. I personally think it's like where are you going to get the best development? Where are you going to learn the best skills? What's going to be good for your CV? But it's a man's world, and do you know what I mean? People are chasing the dollar sign as well. I get it.
Yeah, do you know what? I think it's linked to that pressure that I mentioned of people coming out of college and university. So you see social media nowadays, it's people who have 9 revenue streams, diversify your income, and these guys are like, oh, I make 150k a month. I've got like 4 houses, and this is the rent I get from them. Imagine coming out of university or college with that being the expectation of what success is, or you've gone on a Love Island, right? Like that's basically it. You got your YouTube Love Island, or you've made it big in some sort of diversification of revenue streams. But imagine coming out of university age 21 and being offered, right, you can have this 20k job, 22k job, and you're probably thinking, sitting there going, oh, fucking hell, have I just gone through university for 3 years? And I mean, I don't know what it is now. Mine was 20 odd grand. I think it went up to 40 grand the year after. You spent all that money and you're sitting there going, wow, is that what I went to university for? So I get it. I get why people are so driven by money, but the more development and learning you can do in that first 5 to 10 years of your career, when you then get to 30, which is, I would say, you've built up the confidence and the behaviors and things. That's when you can start to think more about, right, it's time to start yielding the money now from all of the experience I've built.
Yeah. I I didn't take life seriously until 30. Like I worked many different jobs, but actually, you you only with hindsight, this is the gift, but it's actually like a selection tray of, oh, I got that skill from that weird thing I
Mm.
did, and oh, by doing that and stuff like that. Like my advice to young people is money will always come. And I've said this to my mum before, and it's very hard now. I wish I'd documented it because nobody will believe me. But I used to say when I was 22, 23, and I was like following my dreams of music and stuff like that, I was like, it's not about money. I was like, if I wanted to be wealthy in life, I could be because I've got the mindset. I know that if I threw myself at it and I really wanted, if I wanted to be a millionaire, I could be.
Yeah, you just
Like
you
like
just jump on an OnlyFans or something, wouldn't
exactly.
you?
But I had that blind belief, and I still have it now. But like, actually, my mindset has changed, and I am working towards revenue now and building something, but only because of like time freedom, so that I can then focus on things that I love moving forward. But your your money will come. Like I think people are too worried about like making as much money as possible, only for them to be unhappy and stuck in a job. I think Rory Sutherland talks about like the salary trap and things like that. It's like it's a real thing. It's like you get so comfortable with the life that you feel like you can go nowhere. Whereas actually your twenties are for trying different things and for traveling and for, do you know what I mean? Not being afraid to sleep on sofas and floors. Like you can do that in your twenties, and you should do that.
I want to pick up on that selection trait. It made me think of Forrest Gump when my mama says
Yeah.
that the life's like a box of chocolates thing. But I think there's a new thing we could come up with there. Like life's like a box of chocolates. Like the each different, the I don't know, the strawberry cream and the orange cream and the walnut. Like all of it's these different little nuggets of skills and stuff that you've built up over the years. That, like you said, in hindsight, you don't actually realize you picked up those skills because they're so hidden in between failures or hidden in between moments where you were, I don't know, distracted or whatever, and then 10 years when you look back you're like, wow, I've actually built up this selection tray of
Yeah.
skills that's actually pretty good.
And you don't realize, like, speaking of Reed, I had some difficult conversations with management at points about different things about progression, and I was the only person in Reed history to get promoted and then demoted again. So that you get a bit of a theme for different jobs. I get promoted too
Yeah,
quickly.
I was just gonna ask you, that's two jobs in a row, isn't it? You got promoted and
Yeah,
demoted, so
it's me. I'm the problem. It's me. Um, but yeah, but it. I think I tell you what my thing has always been with jobs is I've got this honeymoon period where I like when I'm in it, like I'm so excited, and then I'm like, but this actually doesn't fulfill me. Whereas with what I do now, it's always a honeymoon period. Like I'm always excited because there's so much variety. Whereas I've always found that in certain jobs I get bored, and I think, but what I was saying about like the lessons learned, like some of the difficult conversations I had during Read have made me like learn lessons later on in life that I'm like, actually, I was unreasonable. Do you know what I mean? And like, but you only learn and you piece it together. It's the gift of hindsight, but then you have to go through those situations, and that's what builds resilience and make you a better communicator. Okay, well, last time I asked for a pay rise, I actually ended up getting in trouble for it. So what can I do next time? And only through kind of those experiences can you truly learn.
okay, we got and we've got fairly philosophical and deep early on, which is good. You know, it's a good depth of
I
conversation.
try.
So it it happens. What were the key learnings then? Like, if you were to look back at Read and go, right, these are the things that I learned from that period of time, what would they be?
Um, I, I think one of the things that I really took away, and it is from Robert Greene's book as well, is like never outshine the master. Like I used to think I was brilliant, but I think that everybody is also replaceable in a work setting. Like it, I think when you're an employee, an employee or an employer, it is about being a team, and yeah, you can be a top performer within that team, but like trying to outshine or make demands based on certain things, it's like you've got to, you've all got to row together, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no,
That
that
was
makes sense.
that was one of the big things. Um, I think I thought character would get me further. I think like I've always relied on like personality, and personality is great, and personality will get you through the door in job interviews and stuff like that. But actually, putting in the we're kind of looping back, but putting in the hard work is definitely one. Did I work hard in that job? No. Like I didn't do anything to develop my skills inside or outside of work really. Like you're not you're never a polished or a finished article. You should constantly be refining your work ethic and
So
doing
I
things.
can't imagine you as someone who did, when you said I did nothing, but what you mean is like you clocked in, you clocked out, you kind of you move things along, but other than that, you didn't invest into yourself with the aim of, right, I want to be better at
Yeah,
everything. Like,
I thought my character and my personality was enough to get me through. Like you, when we talk about sales, you think gift of the gab, can chat to anyone. I thought that's what I am. I didn't see sales as a skill. I didn't see communication as a skill. I'd clock in, I'd do the bit, I'd have a laugh. And some days the results were good, and some days they weren't. But there was no process and there was no discipline. There was no formula. It was just like, I wonder what guy's gonna turn up to read today. Is he the guy that drank 16 pints of the weekend, who's gonna probably not do much, or is it the guy that's probably got to make a bit of extra money this week because he's got a video shoot coming up? Cool.
right, okay, yeah, interesting. It's weird because like you talk about the charm and the personality, which, fast forward 10 years or whatever, and that's one of the things you're most famous for, most recognizable for, is the personality, but like bringing the personality to business and to sales. So it's interesting, isn't it, how uh without doing the hard work, rolling your sleeves up, that grit that you spoke about, doing the hard stuff, that's not enough to set you apart and for success. But after doing the 10-15 years of labor, the personality and the charm, that's what sets you apart, because you have got the repertoire of all the skills and things that you've built up.
There's nothing like there's nothing interesting about a 22-year-old who thinks that works in sales and thinks he knows it. It's like, what have you done? What have you got to show? Like it's one of those things. But I think like once you've done the reps, you've done some of the heavy lifting, and you've been. I started cold calling at 16, and every job I've had has pretty much been telemarketing after there, on the phones, rejection, one after the other. You go through it, like it takes a lot, but like it's not gonna get you down anymore.
All right, then. So why did you leave then? What was the reason for departing Reed?
Being completely honest, so the advice that my mum gave me was there'd been some changes with commission, and I felt like I, I felt like I was the victim. I felt like things were unfair. It was unjust. As an employer now, I can look at it and go, that was completely fair. I was in the wrong. I was being stubborn. And actually, I would have had an even better career if I'd been able to say, you know what, it is fair. I get it. But my ego and my pride was too big. So I started looking elsewhere. I found a company that was looking for a salesperson that sold digital theatre products. So it was like Netflix, but for theatre. Well, I've got a drama degree. And when I interviewed, they said like your commission structure is going to be, you're probably going to work. I think at the time I was probably after commission, I was earning about 30K with Reed. It wasn't loads and loads, but it was extra money. I think they said my commission was going to be about 70, 80 grand. And I thought, yep, I'm in. Applied, got the job, and culturally, I hated it. The people were nice, but not my type of people. It was really small. There was no room for growth. And what I later learned was 80 grand is on the table, but you'd have to be an account manager for 5 to 10 years to even get anywhere near that. So it was a case of go and do something. And I was like, oh. But I always think about these moments. And actually, that was the moment that doing a job that I didn't really like for 6 months, I think I was there, that was enough for me to say, let's quit our jobs and let's go self-employed as the band, which only lasted another 6 months. But that's a story for another
This
day.
this 6 month honeymoon period seems to be a repeat sort of thing, and is that in terms of like what you learned from each of these roles, and like from that one you learned that very, very common, by the way, the last like 4 or 5 conversations I've had has featured this, where someone in sales has left for more money elsewhere and then realized the rug's been pulled from underneath their feet and the commission was never there, or the money was never there. So do you still struggle? Obviously you've got a successful company now and you've started multiple other sort of ventures, but are you conscious of that 6 month period? Like in your head, do you acknowledge the fact that you may feel a certain way after 6 months, but because of past experiences, you've learned something.
I think the thing is now, and I think it's like I commit to the thing. Like there, I was kind of like in it. Let's see what happens. But if you're gonna just ride it and see what happens, I know what's gonna happen. After 6 months, you're gonna get bored. You can start looking elsewhere. Whereas with we have a meeting now. When Zach set it up, I said I'll commit to a year. I was like, I know that usually around 3 to 6 months, but I was like, what if I commit to a year? Imagine what could happen. Whereas now in my brain, I've tricked my brain to say I'm committed forever. Like obviously you don't know what's going to happen. Where will we be in 5, 10 years? But it's not like I can promise you I haven't looked at a job, but like a job board or anything like that since starting up on my own. But it's different, isn't it? You're building something. Your job your job role is what you build. It's not the same day to day. I think it's completely different. I think I don't enjoy being employed. I think that's one thing I've learned about myself, and I think I learned that in my last job before Insurance Revolution, but we might touch on that later on.
Yeah, do you know what? That seems to be another recurring theme of people who become founders. So I was speaking to Tom Hunt from Fame. You'll know him from LinkedIn, but he spoke about realizing after a certain period of time or a certain number of jobs, he was like, I am a terrible employee. I should not be employed. Like, that's not me. And that's when he went down the founder route. And it's a very interesting trait. It seems to be very, very common for people who end up being very, very successful in their own ventures.
I always thought I could do better. I always saw things and thought I wouldn't do things like that. That
Mm.
no, I think like I'm a bit egotistical in that way. But I mean, yeah, it's time for me to put my money where my mouth is, and that's kind of what we're trying to build now.
Yeah, do you know what my friends or my sister will call it neurospicy. So the way in which you always look at a situation or a process or something and go, probably wouldn't have done it like that. It would be better if you did it like this. Like it's quite apparently a neurospicy way of thinking about life
Yeah,
and going into life. So okay, right. So you touched on the fact that you did the the theatre, sort of digital theatre thing for 6 months, and then you decided, right, now's the time. I'm going to go in for myself and do the music. So let's talk about the tailor-made.
the tailor made. So the only way that we could really make money was a bit of money from gigs here and there. We weren't really doing much. I think at that point, I think that the true story is, and I don't know how much I've told you this in the past, we quit our jobs. A week later, we auditioned for X Factor. We got three no's, and Simon Cowell said, "Why would I want? I've already got One Direction. Why would I want Wrong Direction?"
Oh,
Which was brutal. And
oh God.
people say like, why do you talk about rejection all the time? And I'm like, trust me, I can say, I could take it. And that rejection bit, being completely honest, was I would say up there as like one of the worst. Like I watched X Factor as a kid. Like I'm obsessed
Mm.
with it. It was like going to the museum, but getting a backstage pass, and like I processed it. And you know what? It's a funny one because it's like, were we a bit deluded to think we were going to do well on X Factor? I don't know, but the 3 years prior, well, actually, the producers had been hounding at our door saying, "We want you to come on. We're doing original songs X, Y, and Z," and we'd been crowned London's Best Buskers by Boris Johnson. We'd won Pride's Got Talent, which meant we supported Blue on the Pride in London stage. Like we'd done all these different things, and we were like starting to get a bit of recognition, but we thought, right, okay, X Factor want us. It's going to happen. We didn't. I didn't think we'd get to the final. I didn't think I'd get rejected at the first hurdle. And the producers, we caught up with them after a few months, and they said, we're not even going to air your episode. We don't even want you on because you weren't bad enough to be bad, you weren't funny enough to be funny, and you weren't good enough to be good. So I said, fair enough. So it allowed us. Luckily, the day after the rejection, we were busking with. Have you ever seen Stomp the musical? You know, with the dustbin lids.
Yes, yeah. And when you said dustbin lids, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. We were busking with them outside like King's Cross, and we were on ITV News. So it was like, there's something here. So that's what we did. We quit our jobs. We threw ourselves into busking for 4 to 6 hours every day on the streets of London, on the underground. Some days making £30 between three of us, and some days making £400-500. So like more than a normal job, probably not. But we were doing what we loved, and we thought we're getting out there, blah blah blah. Um, After about 6 months, 6 month honeymoon period, you know me, uh, we were struggling for money, and that was the period that we moved in with my auntie, and we ended up living with my auntie for 5 years. For me and two of my best friends lived with my auntie. Me and my other best friend were sharing a room, rotating from floor to bed every couple of weeks, and we were working to kind of bring home a little bit of money, and that was everything from pot wash to bar staff, anything that was fractional that felt like it wasn't like I couldn't go from a 9 to 5, 5 days a week, back to that. It was like I need something in between. And then I found a job that was selling insurance that they hired purely dancers, actors, musicians, and the minimum you had to do was a minimum of 2 days a week. So it was sales, it was 2 days a week. It's what I knew. And I ended up doing that for a little while. That was union insurance. I don't know why I've spent so much time selling insurance.
Yeah, I was going to say, I've seen the word. If I did Control F on the word insurance throughout
Yeah, I
the
know.
details I've got here, it'd be a lot.
Don't know how. And then the band started taking off, and then we signed with the manager. We started to get a bit of traction. We went on tour with Tom Jones. We went on tour with like Madness. Did some gigs for CeeLo Green. We're due to go on tour with Little Mix. We were backstage, and then one of the lads said something that upset one of the girls, and we got thrown off the tour. Awful. Um, but yeah, we,
Oh
we did
God.
lots and lots of these amazing things and working in sales alongside it. And then one day we got a call, and it was our agent, it was our manager, and it was our promoter all on one call. And they said, we don't think we can take you any further. It's probably best we call it a day.
And what sort of age are we talking here? So, like, when did you start fully committed? You said you lived with your auntie for 5 years. Like, what ages are we talking?
Yeah, so we started when we were 20. Just yeah, about 20 the year before, and I think we finished at 27.
Oh, so a good third of your life, like at that point, a
Yeah,
quarter of
yeah.
your life, even now.
Thinking we were gonna make it. Like we did loads of stuff. Like we were Radio One's house band. Like you, what
No
I
way,
think in
no.
life is you ever seen that James Arthur Buskin video?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was we were the guys.
Well,
Um,
are you in that video? Because I've watched that
Yeah,
video.
and it's had quite a few million views, but I'm not bragging. It's fine.
I'm gonna watch that later.
Yeah, you'll enjoy it. But I always think in life, like you've got to have evidence, and sometimes like whatever it is your career is or what you want to do, what your path is, you start doing something, and there are bits of evidence along the way that say you're on the right path. So after a year of moving to London, we got crowned London's best buskers by Boris Johnson. That is like a bit of, and even 6 months into the band, a visiting director came to the university and went, I want to manage you guys. And he did a showcase, and we ended up like meeting Mika's manager and stuff. So you get little bits along the way. And then we did the tours, and we were like, yeah, it's happening. But then the evidence started to slowly move away, and the phone stopped ringing a little bit. And we were doing the same thing that we'd done for a couple of years. And actually, life typically compounds. So if you think in terms of like
Mm.
5 years of like what happened, well, like surely it compounds. If it, and I mean this is a hard one because this is business, but say we've got 3 years of businesses, and I look at all the successes we've had. If the next 3 years started to decline even more, well, I'd have to question myself and go, well, why is it declining? Is it the economy or blah blah blah, or is this maybe not the right path? Do you know what I mean? So it's like it's about knowing when to quit as well. So one of the lads in the band said, "We're being dumped. We should do it on our own. We can go against the system." And actually, the logical and the emotional response was, we put everything we can into this. It's time to call it a day. And I think that's people talk about like following your dreams, but I think about knowing when to quit your dreams is also important.
Yeah, there's a couple of things that there's a theory that confidence is a series of successful outcomes stacked. So you've got confidence and you've got arrogance. Arrogance is believing you're good at something without any evidence to support it, whereas confidence is repeating something multiple times and being successful at it. You've got confidence because you know you've done it before and you had a successful result. Do that 10 times, you got confidence. So you had this confidence, and then all of a sudden, like you said, the success stopped, and the confidence was sort of chipped away out because you had these negative outcomes. And I don't know, in marketing we might call them positive signals. Have you got positive signals that suggest growth? Great, carry on. In sales, have you got pipeline that's growing and your win rate is maintaining and all that sort of stuff? Great, carry on. Yeah, that's interesting. So when you got to that age 27, then did that feel like a huge crossroads in like you said, it was either you've got to not accept defeat, accept that you gave it the best that, you tried as hard as you could, and that's not your destiny. Was that like a massive crossroads for you mentally in terms of like where you wanted to go in life?
Yeah, but I also think that, and this is a real interesting one when I kind of think back on it, because I don't spend a lot of time thinking about this phase of my life, but I think it's like you're in a crap relationship. Do you know what I mean? If you're self-aware enough, you don't get the call and think, where was that coming from? Oh, that's so like, oh my God, I've just been dumped. It's like, I get it. Like I saw that coming. And actually, I remember having a conversation with my auntie coming upstairs, and it was maybe 3 or 4 months before, and everything was changing. The two lads in the band had got long-term relationships, and they'd like settled down. It was like, oh, we're not even like hanging out as a band as much anymore. Like life was changing. We were growing up, and I said to my auntie one night, I said, I actually feel like it's drawing its way to an end. I think I'd like to like go and explore and travel the world and maybe go on the cruise ships. I'd already started looking because it was only a few weeks after that that I had interviews and auditions lined up. So like I already kind of knew, but it is hard, and it definitely took a couple of years after it because it's grieving. Like whether it's a person or a time of your life or a friendship or a moment, whatever it is, you're still allowed to grieve that moment, and it still hurts or it's still like upsetting that it's over. But I knew that if the decision is to put one more year into it, even if the payout was tenfold what we did, I don't think I wanted the payout anymore. I think I was past whatever that was, that chapter. I think I was like, cool, I'm happy to like say no, let's move on. And then I had some exciting chapters after that.
Yeah, I thought that the chapter analogy is nice, like chapters, sections of life, but it feels as if around that 27, 28, 29 seems to be a natural chapter in most people's lives that I speak to. I think you're in that gap between being in your 20s, so you've got an excuse for maybe things not going right, or you've got an excuse for making mistakes, or an excuse for something you did wrong in a relationship. And then you get to like 28, 29, you're like, fuck, I'm nearly 30. Would 30-year-old me do that? Is this where I saw myself at 30? 30 also seems to be the age where you're like, oh, I want to be married and have a house and have kids, which we all know now it's a very unrealistic sort of target date to be able to do those things given the cost of everything. But it seems to be that 27 to 29 is a natural chapter in people's lives, in pretty much everyone that I've spoken to. Would you like to get Simon Cowell on the podcast? You've had some pretty big names on the podcast recently. Would that be someone who you would get on the podcast?
You know what? I'd love to have Simon Cowell on the podcast. I think it'd be brilliant. And I think it was Rita Ora and Cheryl Cole. And you know what? Like, I get it. Everybody's got a job. You know what? If I was an arse to somebody that cold called me one day, I've just had a really bad meeting. I lost it. Like, everybody's got a job to do as well. Like, I get it. Like, do you know what I mean? You're on an entertainment show. It was late at night. You've been there all day. So had I. But I'm not looking for any empathy. It's like you were tired. Some lads come out. They did a cover of R. Kelly's Ignition that wasn't very good. Your job is to think of funny, witty things to put people down. Was it the seventh time he'd said that line that day? Probably. But yeah, like no love lost. I'm so grateful because actually, Jamie, like, what, let's imagine the world where that didn't happen. So I got through to the final. Okay, say I'm in the final and it's the TaylorMade versus Reggie and Bolly, and I probably would have been held to being a band for the rest of my life, and I don't think I would have had the self-awareness to work out who I am, what I'm doing, blah blah blah. I'm happy with who I am. Like
Mm.
I love the journey. I probably wouldn't have met my partner. I wouldn't have had my son. I wouldn't have been running a business with my best friends. It's like it all happened. So Simon, come on the podcast.
Yeah, do
I've
you know
put
what?
it
And
behind me.
it's
We're bros.
that wasn't from the angle of like trying to get your own back or like why did you say that to me? More so from the like he's had he's had a couple of serious accidents. He's had a kid since then, and you see all this stuff online about him changing as an individual, realizing what's important in life. And I think it actually would be a great conversation about that. Sorry, just not my mic. The conversation about you getting that no and what has happened to you, and then story of what's happened to him. I think that would genuinely be a very, very good episode. But hey, let's manifest it. Let's make it happen. Right, cruise ships. I'm intrigued. So you were 27-ish. You had thought, right, I'm going to start looking at other things. I want to travel the world. Cruise ships. Talk
Cruise
to me.
ships. So I knew somebody that was on a cruise ship, and I said I was a singer, so I wanted to go on a cruise ship and sing. Like that was what I wanted to do. And a girl said to me, "Can you play an instrument?" I said, "Not well enough." She went, "Well, I can get you a job doing quizzes and a bit of entertainment and a bit of bingo." Um, she put it through. It was very quickly after. I was actually seeing somebody at the time, and I said, "Listen, I've got this opportunity. I'm moving to Australia." 2 weeks later, it was like bang. It was
As you
just
do.
over. That's a story for another day. But it was just very, very quick. It was like, right, bang, you're in Australia, and you're just doing this every day. And my job was it was like buttling to water. My job was to entertain. And what did I learn from that job? A lot of communication. It was wild, as you can imagine, and I'll happily answer anything on the cruise ships. So, just for context, I did one cruise ship in Australia, which was just bingo host, entertainment host, making people smile and laugh. Second one was from America, from Miami, and that was singing every single night. So, I got a lot more money and a lot less hours worked, but they were both equally great. And then obviously COVID hits, and there's no need for a cruise ship singer during a pandemic, and life pretty quickly changed over there. But the cruise ships was amazing because you meet different people from all. I would say that on that cruise ship there was probably somebody from every part of the world. Like you've got every kind of culture. It was amazing.
Now you've kind of given us like a whistle stop tour of the cruise ships there. But how long did you do each of those for?
6 months for each. 6 months at sea.
Funnily enough, 6 months
Yeah,
ago.
yeah,
There it
6 months,
is.
and then the 6 month singer. I can see the episode now, and then yeah, I went back to London and did a bit of sales in between.
So 6 months in on the cruise ship in Australia, well, from
Hmm.
Australia. 6 months on the cruise ship from Miami.
Yep.
Were those like the thousands of people cruise ships?
Yeah.
Big, 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 big. And what was your? I see. I've still not heard you sing. So what style of music was it that you were from Miami?
We had a country night. We had a soul night. We had a Motown night. We had a pop night. We had a what else did we have? 80s night. Sing anything. But I also had another singer, a female singer. So she did all the nice singing. I was just there to get on the dance floor with the grannies, basically.
Okay, this is a side question. Favorite song?
Favorite song? You know, I used to love singing Tennessee Whiskey,
Chris
country
Stapleton.
song.
Was
Yeah,
is it
great
Chris
song.
Stapleton originally?
No,
No, it's not, is it?
Chris Stapleton. It was a cover, but hey, he made it his own, and that's what's important. But Tennessee, I tell you why, because I remember I'd never heard it, and then I had to learn it before I went on the cruise ship, and I went for lunch with my dad, and there was this piano player around Liverpool, and he was singing that, and I was like, oh, that feels like a kind of nice moment. Like I've never heard this song before, and now I'm
Mm.
hearing it, and it's like, anyway.
It is
That
a
was
it is a blooming good song.
yeah, it was great. And everybody would be in the audience from like Georgia, and they'd be going, "Sang it, sang it," and I'd have my tie off, and I'd be swinging it around, and that'd be cool.
Oh, I can picture it. I can
You
picture
can
it.
see it.
Right. So, what did you touched on a couple of the things that you learned there in terms of like communication skills? You're taken out of your normal environment and just thrown in at the deep end. What was COVID brought that to an end sort of swiftly, but what did you take from that year that gave you enough to sort of make a decision on where you wanted to go? Like, what did you learn from that year?
So interestingly, so like I had a lot of like self awareness and self development. So much so that when I was on the second cruise ship, I wrote a book. Now it never went anywhere, never did anything. It was just a bit of like a memoir, but it was really good for like processing everything. I talk about that
Mm.
grieving thing, like the lessons I learned. There was also definitely a point like towards the end of the band where I went through a bit of like a social anxiety where I was like, well, I don't really like speaking to people, or I don't really feel very confident, which I think is kind of normal because there's so much rejection at some point. Like you're busking every single day, and people are like saying you shit to your face, which is it's like cold calling. But like I think there was definitely that. Definitely like got my confidence up, and when it came to speaking to people again, and I learned like the kind of the fatal rule of it's all about everybody else. I used to sit with people for like 30 minutes or 40 minutes, and they'd talk about like what it's like in Australia or what they've been doing or whatever, and you've just got to be interested, haven't you? So that was kind of like a big lesson. Um, and I think just like doing the thing, but it also made me realize like, oh, I thought I wanted to go on the cruise ships. I said this would make me happy. It hasn't. Like, what do I really want? You keep getting the things that you want. I was manifesting this singing job on a cruise ship. I got it, and then I was like, is this what you want? Like, I enjoyed the deep work of writing in the middle of the night and just doing stuff like that. I was like, what do I want? I also was very the first half of the cruise ship, I was very disciplined. The second half, I was drinking and probably smoking a lot as well, and it had so much of a knock-on effect to my work ethic, and things like that. So it's a case of like I've definitely learned not to indulge in bad habits if you want to be a high performer.
Do you know what? There's quite a few things in that year. Then, so you became very self-aware. You started. It sounds kind of like a journal book hybrid,
Yeah, yeah,
which made me think about Matthew McConaughey's Green Lights, which is basically a book where he looked back at all of his journals because he did a journal basically his whole life, and he looked back at all these journals and then wrote a book about his life based on these journals that he used to keep. So I was sitting there thinking you could do your own Green Lights book about the year on the cruise ships, which I think would be very very interesting. But so you were very very self aware. You realised that another thing that you thought you would want, another thing that you thought would make you happy and tick boxes, whatever, perhaps wasn't. Which I was reading a book up to last week, finished it last week, called The Midnight Library by a guy called Matthew
love
Haig.
it. Yeah,
Yeah, do you know the book? Do you know?
yeah, I love it. Do you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of the Christmas film "It's a Wonderful Life,"
Yeah,
which is one of my favorite films, and it's just yeah, it is. And you know what? It's interesting you say that, but like there will be people listening to this, and I felt it, but I felt like I was destined for like greatness or good things, but I felt like I just didn't know how to unlock that thing, that whatever it was. And it's only the last few years I've started to figure out how to do that.
yeah. And then before we that because that is a fantastic segue into we have a meeting. But before, like, I just want to, for those who haven't read Midnight Library, it's a book about a woman who is very very unhappy, and she, I think towards the start of the book, she tries to take her life, which doesn't ruin the book, don't worry. And then the book is about this midnight library that she goes into, which is the place between life and death that you go for as long as it takes to find a life that is the life that you want to live, and you're able to pull a book off the shelf and live that life, and you'll live that life until the point at which you're disappointed with that life, and then you'll go back to the midnight library, and it's just this vicious cycle. But it's a book about realizing that the life you're living, like realizing the beautiful things in life, realizing the good things, that, realizing that the world isn't against you, all these amazing sort of things that you can take from it. So I highly recommend go and read Matthew Haig's Midnight Library. It's not massively long, but very, very good book. So definitely go and read that. Right. Okay. We have a meeting. I've heard it from Zach's point of view. So Zach's episode will go live before this, because we had some interesting, funny conversations that were just perfect to sit right before this episode. So let's hear it from your point of view then. So the other half of We Have a Meeting, you came off the cruise ships. This is ballpark 29-ish age wise.
Yeah. I think it was 28 and a
28.
half or
So
something like that.
you came off the cruise ships in this period of time where you were very, very self-aware and learned a lot about yourself, and you were sort of journaling and writing. What happened between the cruise ships and We Have a Meeting then? How did that come about?
So I'm gonna give you the real quick, like, bang, let's do it. I was bored. I wanted to start working at Amazon. So I was just like, it's a bit of extra money, whatever. Night shifts at Amazon. I'd never listened to a podcast before. I started listening to a podcast. I fell in love with podcasting as an art form and thought, maybe I want to do that. Kept listening to these comedy podcasts, and they all said there was this woman in Brighton that teaches stand-up comedy. I thought, I've always wanted to be a stand-up comedian, like the Midnight Library. That's one of the books. So I went down to Brighton during the pandemic to study stand-up comedy. She made it really, really hard to enjoy because she was a very stern woman, and I thought this is meant to be fun. Realised stand-up comedy wasn't for me. I'm working this job in insurance sales. Surprise, surprise.
Again.
It's a bit of a toxic environment. Most people have been there for 5 years. Lots of money on the table. I was taking home more money than the cruise ships. There were some lovely people there, but I just didn't feel fulfilled, happy, content. I thought, is this my life? What am I doing? But it was the pandemic.
Was that for 6 months by any chance?
I was actually there for 18 months.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I did the 6 months and I thought, do one more year. So I was doing it. And the first year just flew by. It was the pandemic. I was like, I have to be there. The second year, I was like, I was talking to my partner about this on the weekend, and the catalyst was I'd got too pissed on a work night out. This was in the April of 2021, so 8 months before I joined We Have a Meeting. Got too pissed, fell over, cut my head open, and woke my best friend, my roommate, in the middle of the night, and he gave me some stern words the next day of like, what are you doing with your life? Now, I didn't feel like I could just quit alcohol because I thought, what are people going to think of me, blah, 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 blah. So I said, I'm going to do a marathon. I'd done a half marathon in the past, but I was like, I'm going to do a marathon because it's something I can just say I'm doing, and then people won't say, oh, are you drinking tonight? It was a bit of a cop-out. And then I started reading all these books about marathons. I started reading Jesse Itzler, who was an entrepreneur, and he spent some time in the monastery. So from April to December, I'm on this real journey. I'd already done a bit of like self-help, self-discovery, stuff like that. But I'm on this discovery of like getting better. And I was like, business, entrepreneurship, what am I going to do? I love the podcasting. I applied for a job at the BBC, and that was going through like an apprenticeship. So I was doing all these different things, and I was really, really getting like my mind together. And in the July, Zach texted me, I've had a brainwave. I said, are you okay? And I'm worried about you. You don't think that often. And he said, I'm going to set up my own business. And it wasn't really like, he said, if it gets going, would you come on board? And I was like, yeah, man, why not? And I was really happy for him. But I was also thinking, I've applied for this job at the BBC to do podcast production. I'm probably going to get that. It'll be fine, whatever. And the more we spoke, obviously we speak all the time anyway as best friends. The more we spoke, it was like, this sounds exciting. And then I saw what he was doing, and he was smashing it. I was so proud of him. And I was like, but what if I'm not good? What if I know I've done sales, but it's a different type of sales, and it's more B2B, and my background's more B2C. And what if all these what ifs? And then we eventually had so many conversations. I said, you know what? Fuck it, I'm in. And the week after I said I'm in, I got rejected from the BBC. And I said, I'll give you a year. And then I handed in my notice at work. I said I want to leave with immediate effect. I want to go and start the job in November. And he said, listen, don't burn your bridges here. Just like ride it out a few more months. Why don't you do until November? You'll be here to the middle of December and just start the new job in the new year. New year, new you. and that was the year, the month I turned 30 as well. In the same time, I'd met my now partner in the November, and it just felt like 30 was around the corner. I moved out into a new flat. I'd met my partner. I had my new career, and it felt like this is the time. The last decade is the point where you've played, you did fun things, you did the crazy things you wanted to do. It's not to say fun isn't on the table anymore, but this next decade, why don't you try different things? Why do you not? Why don't you focus on not leaving a job after 6 months? Why don't you try staying in a relationship? Why don't you try and like not drink all the time or whatever it was? And it was like 20 didn't work for me. Although it did work for me, I learned so many lessons. It didn't get me to where I needed to be. It was like, right, let's try 30. And here we are.
That's do you know, you said you were going to give a very, very quick rundown. The episode that I just mentioned with Zach, he gave a bit more of a detailed overview of the company and things. And I think if you want to go and learn a bit more about the first few years of We Have a Meeting with Jack and Zach, go and listen to that episode if you haven't done already. Because what I want to do now is a bit of a roundup in terms of some quick fire questions, just to sort of capture some of the things, that the highlights, let's say. Now, top 3 tips for, I mean, that like if people have listened or watched that, like that's a very wild journey in terms of getting to the point of 30 and then figuring it out and having massive success. Like there's not many people who can say they did 7 years in a boy band like that. So I've definitely not had that conversation yet, and I doubt I will have another one like that. But what would be the top 3 tips that you've learned from that 10 years between, well, 14 years between 16 and 30? What would be your top 3 tips for climbing the career ladder?
Do the hard, dirty work while you're young, because it's not enjoyable to do it when you're older. Like, get your reps in, whatever it is. Like, even just working a job like McDonald's or sweeping floors or cold calling people, it's crap, but at least you know you can do it, and you've built up some stamina and some muscle, and you're building your resilience. You only build your resilience by going through hard times. So do that. Do the shifts that you feel are never going to end, where you're knackered and you're tired, because you'll look back at them one day and you'll laugh. So even if you're going through a crappy time at the moment now, it won't last forever. That kind of takes me on to number 2. It will all work out in the end. And what did they say? It will all work out in the end. It'll all be all right in the end. If it's not all right, it's not the end. So, like, eventually there'll be a point of peace. But there are periods in your life that are for work, are for struggle, are for recovery. It's working out what they are and when to kind of go hard and when not to go hard, but it will work out eventually. So even if you're on a path that you don't feel is right for you right now, that doesn't mean that that's your path forever, because you can change at any moment. So it's like, how do I didn't just quit my job like that. I waited for the right opportunity, and we have a meeting was the right opportunity. But it's about preparing and not just going kind of off the walls. It's like making educated risks. And finally, it's my favorite is remembering that you'll die, because one day you'll be on your deathbed and you won't care about all the worries and all the grudges. You'll think about the good times with the people that you like. And I'm very honoured that I get to build a business with my best friend and do these amazing things. But there's been hard times, and I know that in the future, because of my evidence now, is that I look back at hard times and I laugh, and I've learned from them, and I might look back at them with nostalgia or whatever it is, but they don't last. Hard times aren't forever.
So I've grabbed my phone here because there's something that I want to read out, because it links perfectly to this, and it is something which those listening might have heard of, and it's called "This Too Shall Pass." Now I know you know this. Tom Hanks has sort of referenced it, but I'm going to read this out because I do think that it is very, very apt after the 3 things you just explained there. So, this too shall pass. King Solomon wished to humble one of his ministers named Benaiah, so he requested that Benaiah bring him a ring that has magic powers that can make a happy man sad and a sad man happy. Benaiah searched high and low for such a ring and finally ended up at a merchant, one of the poorest quarters of Jerusalem. The merchant was stumped with this request, but his soon grandfather appeared from a back room. Without saying a word, the old man took a gold ring from the display and engraved it with "This too shall pass." When Benaiah returned to King Solomon, the king and all his ministers asked with delight if Benaiah had found the ring. They knew Benaiah's mission was impossible and smiled in anticipation of his humiliation. Benaiah handed King Solomon the ring, and his smile faded as he read the inscription. It reflects the temporary nature or ephemerality of the human condition, that neither the negative nor the positive moments in life ever indefinitely last. Now, that is the old Jewish sort of proverb, but this too shall pass is when shit is bad, this too shall pass. It's only up from here. And when it's really, really good, this too shall pass. Enjoy it whilst it lasts, because the chances are it's probably going to turn sour at some point. And that is something which I think links nicely to the three things you just said there. And if you've tuned into the Sales Stoic, you'll know that I'm also a fan of the Remember You Will Die. I've got a tattoo on my arm here, which is Memento Mori, which is the Latin version of Remember You Will Die. Now, just as a very quick explanation of Remember You Will Die for those who don't know what it actually means and are probably thinking, why on earth do you keep telling people that they're going to die on your social posts? What is the whole Memento Mori, Remember You Will Die thing?
It's using it as motivation, because you could leave this earth any second, so let that determine what you think, say, and do. I believe that might have been Marcus Aurelius. One day we'll all be dead, and this worry, this feeling will all be gone. I heard something lovely the other day. It's like, learn as if you'll live forever, and live as if you'll die tomorrow. Was that right?
I don't know. It's your quote.
Yeah, let's say that. So you learn because you don't know, like you want to be curious like a child, but obviously it could be our last day on earth. We don't know how long we've got left. So treat things with kindness. Don't take life too seriously. Don't dwell too much on the sad times. It's as I'm older now, I'm grateful for the sad and the bad times and all the things that you would say. Whether they are sad or bad, that's a perspective thing. But because without them, I wouldn't appreciate what the good stuff is. So even though I've had crappy jobs,
that's I heard that very recently. It's like, by definition, if to have a measure of something being good and bad, you have to have appreciated the bad. Otherwise, how can something possibly seem good? By definition, saying, "Oh, that's good," it's like, okay, but on what scale? You must know what bad is. So you have to have experienced the bad to enjoy the highs, or experience the lows to enjoy the highs. Another book actually that's just made me think of, you may have read it, because I know you do read a lot, and the sort of books that you read are along these lines, but it's a book called Tuesdays with Maury.
Jamie, don't. Jamie, honestly, don't even start. Do you know he's my favorite author? And do you know?
No, really.
I don't know if you want to see it. I've got his two other books, Five People You Meet, tattooed on me. So I can't believe we've never done this before.
Depends where the tattoo is.
They're on my legs, but I'll send you a photo. I had him on the podcast, Mitch Albom, my favorite author. Way. Jamie, why have we only just figured this out?
I'm reading the book right now.
Oh, Maury Schwartz, I love him.
Oh man, yeah. For people who don't.
Sorry, that was a real moment.
Yeah, no. I knew you would have read it. For some reason, I knew you would have read it. But it's basically about this this professor who finds out that he's got ALS, which is a degenerative terminal disease where you basically lose control of the muscles in your body because the muscles degenerate. And it's one of his pupils is going through stuff in life and randomly reconnects with his old professor because he sees him on a program, and then he ends up spending every Tuesday with his old professor Maury Schwartz, and they record and they chat, and he ends up turning it into a sort of like a true story about the lessons you can learn from dying. Like you learn the best lessons about life from dying. And I'm not going to say much more than that. That's kind of like the synopsis of it, but I'm about halfway through it. Brilliant book. I myself am going through this point in my life where I realize I struggle to get the most out of life. I struggle to get the most enjoyment, or to be in the moment, to be present. I'm always thinking, why did I do that? Or I've got that to work towards. I'm never present. And it's books like this that sort of really help. So yeah, there's a Midnight Library and Tuesdays with Maury, two great recommendations of books. And we will get a picture of Jack's tattoo and put it on the screen somewhere
We
here.
can do that. And
We'll have to
do you
do it.
know, Jamie? It's funny because it all goes full circle. And I didn't know at the time. My mum gave me that book when I was 14. So as I'm getting into like my career and I'm starting to think about life, I read it, didn't connect with it at all. Read it years later. Oh my God, it's so who I am now. But his next book actually did get me because I was about 16. 5 People You Meet in Heaven. Read that next. Let me know what you think. We're going to take this offline.
All right. Tell you what, bring it in January, and I'll borrow it and then give it you back.
Remind me. We've got it.
Yeah, we'll do it. Okay, right. So I know the answers to this, but any regrets about your career to date?
No, I can't have regrets. I'm very lucky with where I am now. I'm very happy, very grateful. Everything is. Regret means that, like, I wish I could. No, I'm all right.
No, do you know, after covering off this Too Sharp Arts and remember you'll die, we can't really go into. Yeah, I've got loads of regrets in life. It just wouldn't fit, would it? Okay, so we've touched on we have a meeting, and you guys have set up a couple of other things which are going really well, and the podcast seems to be absolutely smashing it, which is amazing to see. What's next for you?
I just want to keep sharing stories, inspiring people, making people laugh, and making people feel like they can do stuff whilst growing and developing in the meantime. I'll learn lessons as I go through my career, and I think that's part of my mission in life, to share with the world and kind of help the next generation, leave this planet a little bit better than when I left it. If I wish I'd stumbled upon stoicism when I was 20.
Oh,
We're on a
massively
mission
so.
to help the next generation maybe do that sooner. Let's see where we end up.
And on the topic of that and telling stories, yeah, we're working on something. We're working on something that's in the background. The people watching and listening will be the first to know. Okay, career end goal. Like, do you have people? For me, I used to think I was like, right, I want to get to CMO or I want to get to founder. Did you have like an end thing, goal, aspiration where you want to end your career?
Not end, because I've got things that I want to do and things that I want to achieve. But I'll tell you that there's a lovely quote by Oscar Wilde that says, if you want to be a greengrocer or a soldier, you will become it, and that is your punishment. Like, 16 years ago, I was a carer for somebody, and then I was in a boy band, then I was a cruise ship singer, then Amazon, and now I'm running a business. Who knows? Who knows what will happen next? Like, I'm doing a podcast, we're doing all these different things. Let's see what the next decade looks like, and then maybe I'll change. Maybe I'll go back into music. Maybe I won't. Maybe I'll go on Strictly Come Dancing. Who knows? Like, I think less worried about the future and more worried about what can I do on a daily basis to get me closer towards my goals.
No, that's nice. Do you know what? It's again something I always have to have this like structural plan of where I'm going. I always have to have this like timelines of like, you've got to hit this by a certain date, having like an A to B, and it's something that I'm to your point about you can't plan it. Where you'll end up where you're meant to end up, and just enjoy being in the present and enjoy the journey along the way. And I think that's a lovely place to end. And we are 1 minute prior to our allotted time, which has worked out very, very well. So thank you to everyone listening and watching for tuning in. It's been a great episode, and definitely go and read those 2 books. If there's anything you take from this, all of the gems
Amazing
that we've
books.
had over the last 90 minutes, go and read those books. You can't borrow mine and Jack's. And we will show the tattoo. But thank you for tuning in. We will see you in the next episode. Make sure you follow or subscribe on whatever channel you are listening or watching. But thank you very much, Jack.
Thank you.